Hello, today I'll be making a tier list for late game builds for Bad of Diablo. This is for mapping builds, Ubers, Declone, or level 85 zones like Chaos. I didn't play every build, so if there's skills missing, it's probably because I didn't play them. It goes from S tier to needs work. Needs work doesn't mean the skill is bad, it's just that it needs something to be changed, like mechanic wise or the way it works. So the first one is Blade Shield with Blade Throw. This build got nerfed a couple times. It was really powerful. It was one of the most popular builds a couple of seasons ago, and now it got nerfed. It's still very strong, it's just that your clear is slower since you have less blades and a bit less damage. So I would put that in B+, I would say. Still very strong. Second build is Ball Lightning. This skill can be found on Ondal's staff. It got reworked. Ondal's used to give experience, but now it gives a skill. So technically anyone can use this skill, but it's mainly on sword because you have Lightning Mastery. And this build is very strong also. It's very safe, so all you need to put is 20 points in Lightning Mastery and the rest in whatever you want. So people use Energy Shield and the synergies. It's very cheap. You don't need to use Lightning Skillers, so you can have mana and life charms in your inventory. I'll put this in A tier. This is very strong in my opinion. It's not the fastest, but it's very safe and cheap to make. Bone Spear. Bone Spear is a great starter, but for the late game, it doesn't scale that well. The energy synergy got removed, so with each point you would get more damage on your Bone Spear. It got removed, and it just made it a bit worse in the late game. So for a starter, it's one of the best, if not the best starter, but I would give this a C+ for late game. Next up, we have Martial Arts. The Martial Art tree got reworked this season, and people are sleeping on it. I think it's very strong, especially Lightning Claw or whatever it's called, the lightning damage one. It's very good. It has a static on hit and also like a lightning, I don't know, like lightning strike, we would call that, but it's very strong. I would give it like a B+ or B. It's very good. A Cleave for Barb. It's mainly used in Declone and so Ubers too, I guess. In Wolf Farm, also very good. It doesn't clear map very quickly. You don't have a big range, and your damage is okay. It's mainly because you're very tanky and you use life on it, so you're like invincible. Cleave doesn't use attack rating, so you always hit. It's one of the reasons why people use it so much in Declone and stuff. So I'd give it a B+ again. A Blizzard. The thing about Blizzard now is that the range on it is bigger, but the icicles, the things that damage enemies, is not bigger. It's same size, so you miss a lot more. So I think I would put this in needs work. The icicles needs to be bigger for it to be very good. Because right now in the late game, there's no reason to play Blizzard over either Freezing Pulse or Frost Nova. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But for starting, it's pretty good. Like if you're boss farming or early mapping, this is pretty good. But late game, I don't think I would use it. I think it needs to be changed a bit. Corpse Explosion, it's one of the strongest spell in the game. But I don't know if I would put it in S tier just because it's like super, not hard to play, but you have to spam like crazy, like every skill, and I think people don't like that. Including myself, so I would put this like A or S tier. It's in the middle, I guess, but it's very strong. It has a huge range. It covers pretty much the whole screen, and you have a lot of builds that you can play with it to complement Corpse Explosion. Either poison, Fire Golem, summons. You can do whatever. It's very strong. Fireclaw Druid. It got nerfed like every patch. I don't know why. Like I don't see it that often anymore. Like a couple years ago, it was the Declone killer. You could, one guy killed Declone with Fireclaw and using Saigon, full Saigon. But no, it's still good, I guess. But it's mainly used for Declone. For farming maps, it's not the quickest. It's okay, I guess. So I'll give it like C+. Fire Golem. This is a variation of Corpse Explosion. It is a bit slower than like regular fully geared with like Enigma and stuff. Double Fire Golem. Necromancer, but it's very interesting and you do like insane single target damage with Fire Golem. So I would put this like B minus, I guess. It's very strong and it's pretty cool. Bone Armor, the rune word, gives you the ability to have an extra Fire Golem for your Necro, so that's why it's a build. Fist of Heaven, this is one of the strongest builds in the game right now. I would give it S tier. It's not the best with 8 players, but in like small groups or solo, this is one of the top builds in the game. It's pretty expensive though, like the charms are, like clean charms are gold or Vex Room, a combat skiller. It's insane. But it's very popular, so that's why it's so expensive. Here we have Flame Dash Druid. Some people call it Avatar Druid. You just call it Flame Dash. You use Hurricane, Tornadoes, but the main skill is Flame Dash. You can be very, very squishy with this build if you go max energy, because it has a synergy with your energy stat. The more energy you have, the more damage Flame Dash deals. So if you're on hardcore, usually you don't max energy since you're gonna die in like one hit. But overall, this is a very strong build. It's great in Icy Cavern and Rune Citadel. I would give it like A tier. Elemental Boson, Cold and Fire Arrows. It's pretty decent. You just lack the Leech, the Sustain, and also the tankiness that you get from Fate, for example, that you summon a bunch of skeleton to tank for you. You don't have that option with Ice or Fire Boson. The damage is good, but the defense is not that great right now, so I'll put it like C+. It's a very fun build though. Freezing Pulse, I really like this build. It's one of my favorite spell in the game. The only complaint I have is that cold immunes are unbreakable, but that's just Diablo 2 for you. But it's still very, very strong, and it's great in Chaos. I would give it like a minus or B+, probably B+ actually. Just because there's so many cold immunes, it's pretty annoying. In maps you can do Icy Cavern, there's no cold immunes. The other one is Forgotten Desert, there's one cold immune if I remember correctly. So you can do this map too, but they're pretty dangerous maps with the chargers mainly. The other monster doesn't really matter, but the chargers are very, very deadly and they're not blockable. So even if you have Storm Shield, they don't care. Frost Nova used to be king in pod. It got nerfed a couple times if I remember correctly. People used to use Frost Nova with Energy Shield and it got nerfed. I think it's worse than Freezing Pulse, but still pretty good. So I would just put it like B or B minus. Still good though. Frozen Orb and Hydra, these are used together usually. They're very versatile build. You can do pretty much any content. It's pretty strong. It's cheap also. Cold Scatters in general, because mostly I think you want to use Frozen Orb mainly. And so it's pretty cheap. It's a fun build. It's great for progression also. I'll put this in like A minus. Just because you don't scale that well, because you use both like elements. Your damage is not as crazy late game, but it's very versatile. Hemorrhage, this is a new skill in pod. This build doesn't have any immunities. It deals true damage, so it bleeds enemy. It's great in solo play or less than 4 players, I guess. Beyond that, it struggles against high HP target. You can use Iron Maiden to reflect damage, like you spawn a golem or something and it reflects damage, and you have single damage like that, it's okay. But other than that, like fighting Declone and Ubers, I don't think it's doable. Probably Declone is doable though, actually. Use poison and stuff to stop his regen. But I'll put this in B+. Gear for it is very cheap. Curse killers are almost free, and the items they need for it, like late game items. Homunculus, it's super cheap, very strong, gives you +4. Trank Gloves gives you +2 to curse, so just with those 2 items, you're set. It's very strong. And it's a great support, because you have a bunch of points in your curses. Holy Shock Paladin, I would put Holy Shock and Dual Dream Paladin in the same category. They're kind of similar, I guess, in a way. And it's very strong for Ubers, Declone. It's a bit squishy, but you do a lot of damage. If you don't get the charge bug where you're like stuck in place in maps, you're very strong. But if you get that bug, which happens pretty often, you might be screwed. But other than that, it's a very strong build, and it's pretty fun too. Like you charge around and just kill everything. I'll put this like B plus or B. Wind Druid doesn't scale as well as other builds, especially for other Druid builds, I would say. It's not a great support either, unless you have Oak Sage maxed out. And the tornadoes are kind of wonky, like they go where they want, so it's kind of annoying, but it's a great starter. I'll put this like C or C+. Immolate got nerfed like a couple times again. It's a fire skill for the sword. It deals a lot of damage, it's pretty mana hungry, but it has 1 synergy, so it's pretty flexible with what you want to do with it. You can go energy shield, that's the most popular thing. It's very strong in Cavs or Rune Citadel mainly, but we don't see that build very often anymore. I would put it like B-. Leap. This season Leap got changed, and now it deals damage, but the damage on it is like 50% weapon damage or something. And there's a attack rating check, so you don't always hit. So it's not great in that category, but I think it has a lot of potential to be very good. You can do Ubers with this. It's very, very slow, but you can do Ubers with this. S tier. No, but it needs work. If it deals more damage and maybe like give it minus target defense on it or something like that, because you need a lot of attack rating, and it doesn't deal that much damage with this skill. So, but one of the upside is that you can use a slow weapon with high damage, just like Whirlwind. So it works in a similar way to Whirlwind, but Whirlwind attacks like 5 times per attack, if I remember correctly. So there's like no way to use this currently, but it has a lot of potential. I would like to see this build being changed a bit and buffed. Lightning Fury, this is one of the best build in the game again. Player's 8, it's very strong. Lightning damage, so Conviction just removes almost every immunities. It really shines in maps, and you can play it like lightning, charge lightning, I think it's called, for Ubers and Declone. Obviously, you have to change your gear a bit to be more defensive, but you do insane damage. The charge type skills in this game deal the most damage, and Amazon is no different. Lightning traps in. This is not that great in pod. You know, it's lightning damage, and overall lightning damage is very strong because, like I said, you can break almost every immunities with Conviction. There's no point to play this, I think, right now, especially since Death Sentry is pretty weak. And if actually, I would put this in needs work probably. I would like to see the Lightning Sentry to have its fire rate increase. I think it's fine that Death Sentry got nerfed. It was pretty OP, but I think Lightning Sentry should be buff. But I would put this like in C+, because it's playable. If you want to do a playthrough, a solo playthrough, Lightning Trap's pretty good. Because when you reach Hell, because you usually level with Fire Trap, but once you reach Late Nightmare or Hell, there's a bunch of fire immunes everywhere, and Lightning Trap's better. Meteor. Meteor is pretty okay. The only problem is that there's a cooldown again. It got reduced by quite a bit, but when you're farming maps, having a cooldown is a big problem, especially since you don't have any crowd control like you do with cold damage or super crazy instant damage like you have on lightning. So it's a bit more dangerous, but the damage wise, it's very, very strong. I'll put it C+, just because the damage is so good. If I didn't have any cooldown and reduced damage or something, I think this would be like B+ probably, because it's a pretty fun build, and you deal fizz and fire damage, so immunes are not really a problem with this. And we have multi-shot for the Amazon. Last season I would have put this in S tier. It got nerfed a bit, well, quite a bit, but that was a great nerf, I think. So now you have less arrows. It used to be 24 down to 18, and the range on it got nerfed, so you cannot off-screen monsters anymore. And the damage has been nerfed too, but it's still very strong. I have a boson on my on Softcore this season. It's still very, very strong. you're still pretty safe. If you use Fate, Rune Word, you're still very safe with the skeleton just tanking everything. But you need gear for this build to be worth it. Still very strong. A Lightning Sword, it's very strong. Again, lightning damage, usually very strong. You can either go Nova or Charge Bolt. It's pretty much the same. I would put it over Frozen Orb Hydra Sword, but I prefer Ball Lightning just because of the safety. I think it's safer to go Ball Lightning. You don't need skillers. It's a lot more cheap. So I'll put this like a A or A minus. Poison Necro, I'll put this at B plus. The main skill that people use is Desecrate. You don't have the biggest AoE with Desecrate, and there's like a small delay. But you can use Poison Necro with Corpse Explosion, but I'm going with a full poison. I would put it B plus. I can do Declone maps. It's very strong, and it's pretty cheap to build too. You just go full Trang, like a 4-socket Trang armor is like a like Is rune or something. It's very cheap, and the poison facets are also pretty cheap since there's only like 2 builds that use facets. It's Rabies and this pretty much. I'll put it B plus. Rabies pretty similar, but you're melee, so you're a bit worse. You do have Oak Sage though, so you bring support to your team and to yourself. I'll put this a bit lower than Poison Necro. Because Poison Necro also has tankiness from minions and stuff. I'll put this at B. It's very strong. It's also pretty cheap. You can build many different items. You can either just stack full skillers or go a bit more physical. Summon Necro is not that great. Just pure summon if we forget about Corpse Explosion. Obviously you can build Corpse Explosion with skeleton mages, but that's a different thing. If we just focus on skeletons and revive, it's not that great. It doesn't have great clear. The skeleton are pretty squishy. I'll put this like C minus, I guess. I don't like summon at all. It's pretty boring and it's kind of slow. It's very safe though, very safe, but pretty boring and slow. It does have good single target damage though. If you teleport on top of enemy, you're just gonna destroy that enemy. But overall for mapping or Ubers and stuff like that, I don't think it's as good as Summon Druid, for example. I think Druid is much better if you want to go full summon. Shockwave is super good, Ubers and Declone. I'll put this at like A. I don't really count this as a mapping build, even though you can if you go with more movement speed charms and like Act 1 Merc with Harmony, so you can move a lot faster, because you don't really need a Merc with this build. You do a shit ton of damage, but you're pretty slow. Just overall, every builds with in bear form, you're pretty slow overall, but it deals a lot of damage. It's one of the highest damage ability in the game, and it's my favorite build for Ubers and Declone. It's very strong. Woewin Sin. This season in pod we have Woewin back on Chaos Claw, the rune word, and this season we got a couple of changes to Woewin. You can proc like on it effect. Like for example on Chaos there's a on it effect with Frozen Orb, so you can proc that with the Chaos rune word. But there's also a lot of penalties like attack rating and chance to proc also is penalized when you use Woewin. And compared to Barb, Barb also has the same penalties, but Barb deals a lot more damage. It deals like 5 times more damage, and Assassin has the same penalties, so I would put this at needs work. If not, I'll put this as like C minus because it's pretty bad. For single target damage, it's actually pretty okay because you can use your martial arts, like you stack your 3 charges of Blades of Ice and then use your Woewin. It's gonna make your Blades of Ice proc a ton, but you'll need a lot of attack rating. Is pretty rough, and overall Assassin is pretty squishy compared to Barb, so it's a very risky build, I would say, but it's pretty fun. If the attack rating and pretty much I think every penalty should be removed from the Assassin version. Oh, another thing about Woewin Assassin is that it used the LOD version of Woewin and not the classic version like the Barb does. A Summon Druid, if you play in a group, Summon Druid is like A tier, but yeah, if you're playing solo, I think I would put this at like C+. It's not the fastest. It's pretty chill build. I would suggest, like I said, Summon Druid over Summon Necro, because Summon Necro is so fucking boring. And it's in a group is like I said A tier, but for solo play in map it can do Ubers too, But I much rather play Shockwave than Summon. The Shockwave version I use is like a hybrid between Summon and Shockwave, so I max Dark Wolf and Oak Sage, so I'm pretty tanky. It's like a it's like a mix between Shockwave and Summon, but for just pure Summon, I would put a C+ for solo clear. Ethereal Troll Barb. This is one of the skill I got buffed this season. I really like this build. I have a Barb. I think he's like level 96 or something, and I play solo, so I play quite a bit with him. I'll put this probably over multi-shot, probably, or actually, no, I'll put this behind multi-shot. It's very close, but it's very strong in maps. It's pretty bad for single target damage, but then again, it's not a big deal, I feel, just because the only single target that you have to kill is the map boss. It's not a big deal. Overall in maps, it clears great. Rune Citadel, it's one of the best map. Desecrated Temple is very, very good. It can be bad if you don't have silence on your Merc, because the curse duration remove curse pretty fast when you have a silence rune ward. But if there's like decrep on it, it can be pretty annoying. But overall, I really like this build. It's very strong. It's fairly cheap. You have to buy a Phoenix. That's the most expensive thing by far. But the weapon is very cheap compared to like other builds like game weapon. Fire Druid, and this is not the same as Flame Dash Druid. Like if you want to go Fisher and Volcano. I really like Volcano. It's like a high soar, but I really like this build. It's not the fastest clear. The damage on Volcano is like it's mixed. It's fire and physical. In a way, it's nice, but the damage on it is not that great, and it's kind of random the way it hits. Same for Armageddon. But for playthrough, I think this is pretty fun. But late game, it's not that great. I'll put this at like C. It's doable for sure. Early mapping, this is pretty good, but fully geared, I'd much rather go Flame Dash over Fire Druid, regular Fire Druid. So we have Fire Trapsin with Blade Shield. This is probably the strongest build, I would say. Assassin is insanely popular right now. If you go in a public map game, there's gonna be 5 Assassin or more. It's very, very strong. It clears, the best maps for this is Icy Cavern and Rune Citadel. You can also run Burnt Forest and Forgotten Desert, but for Forgotten Desert, Lightning would be better. Very, very strong. It's pretty expensive to build. Like every items for it is pretty expensive, but it's worth it. It's the fastest mapper in the game, I would say. Warcry Barb, this is a very safe build. The damage on it is okay. The range on it is okay. I'll put this at B+. I really like this build. It's one of my favorite. You're playing in a group, people would love you because you have so many points in skillers and Warcry, so you're gonna bring a lot of health and defense. It's very, very good. It's pretty fun too. Wowen, I would put Wowen probably ahead, B+ also, whoops, of Warcry. Big damage, very, very big damage. It's great for declone also. You can do Ubers. Ubers a bit riskier, but it's doable if you bring a shield. I tried to do it with the Warpike, Breath of the Dying. It was pretty sketchy, but I was able to do it. The AoE for mapping is not the best, but it's pretty good. It's kind of fun build. Zealer, so I would put this like physical Zealer. It's not very popular. It's very weapon dependent, and you have good leash, but the damage is like eh. I'll put this like above Summon Skeleton, but that's like pretty much it. I don't like that build that much. You want to go melee Paladin, I think Holy Shock's better, or even I guess here we have Procodin, which is use Blessed Aim, and Blessed Aim has a chance to proc Blessed Hammers, so you can either use Smite, you can use Zeal, Charge. I'll put this I think like C. Yes, C. I'll put this in the middle. It's kind of wonky, like if your hammers hit a wall, they just disappear, and it's a melee build, so you're a bit at risk. And you don't have minions or stuff like that. Yeah, you do have max block and Paladin Shield, which gives you a bunch of block and resist, so you have that going for you, but it's a pretty interesting build. And I would put this like in a meme build category, but it's pretty fun. Mind Blast. I really like Mind Blast, but right now monsters, when you hit them with Mind Blast, they don't react at all. they either don't do anything or die. So they don't put them in hit recovery. So for example, if I hit a monster with multi-shot, if I hit them for a certain amount of their health, they're gonna be stunned for like a half second or whatever. But with Mind Blast, it doesn't do that, so it's a very risky build. The damage on it is okay, it's physical damage, but just because of that, playing this in map is not something I would recommend. Even when clearing chaos, you can like die just because a monster can just rush at you and Mind Blast doesn't do anything to it. So I would put this in needs work. If it would put monster in hit recovery, I would put this at B- maybe, just because the atomization currently is not very interesting. Your late game weapon is a Hodo and a Spirit Shield, which I don't think it's very interesting for a assassin. But just with that change, I think it would be a pretty okay build. Smiter, a lot of people think Smiter is like garbage in pod just because Grief got changed. Before, Grief would give you a bunch of flat damage to your smite attacks. Now it gives minimum and maximum damage, which doesn't give you more damage on your smite, but you have splash damage, and when you're doing declone or uber, this splash damage is applied to the boss you're fighting and the other monsters around, so it kind of balances out. Another difference, I guess, is that you need to be higher than level 17 to beat Ubers compared to vanilla. So I'll put this at like B-, I guess, because it's still very strong and you can build. Declone is very rough with this though. If you don't have that much experience in pod or D2 in general, I would not recommend playing this build for Declone. But for Ubers, you can do it very easily with cheap gear still. A lot of people say you cannot build Smiter anymore, they suck. It's not true at all. For mapping, this is kind of shit though. You don't do a lot of damage and the AoE is very small, just your splash damage. So this is my full tier list. I'll put the link in the description if you want to do the tier list for yourself and then show me the results. I would be very interested to see what you guys think. Again, this is mostly for players 1. There might be some changes for like players 8 or players like 5 and up. So that's pretty much it. I think I'll do another one for like starters or self-found characters, something like that. Thank you for watching and see you next time.